Hey everybody, Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net here to bring you an update about astrology in the news and what is likely to be happening in the next week or so. I am doing this alone today because my usual colleague, Louise Edington, Cosmic Owl Astrology, is on the road. And as usual, you can find me at EmpowermentUnlimited.net. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/. Kathy Beal, where I have a description and analysis of the equinox chart that's coming up. And my YouTube channel is, of course, Professional Aquarian. So again, when I go over the news, it's not just to focus on the news, but to show how the news has been playing out the astrological forecasts that Louise and I have been doing. And what I've got for you this week is a short list, but it's playing out the revelations and the endings that are part of a lunar eclipse, Uranus stationing retrograde, and also the sun crossing the south node, bringing to light a real gear shift change in what's going on. So as for the lunar eclipse, we said leaders, plural, would be falling. And indeed, on the eclipse itself, the Prime Minister of Japan announced his resignation. The Nepalese government fell, and people have been in the streets and setting fire to government buildings there. The French Prime Minister got a vote of no confidence. He's been replaced. And in the days since the eclipse, Bolsonaro of Brazil was convicted of attempting a coup to stay in office and sentenced to 27 years in prison. Also fitting the eclipse energies, on that day, the United Nations decided to move its General Assembly from New York City to Geneva because the U.S. will not give the Palestinian delegation visas to enter the country. I want you to think about how long the UN has been in the Midtown Eastern section of New York City and the number of hotels and businesses, restaurants, stores, etc., that are going to be affected by the fact that the General Assembly won't be there. As Uranus, the planet of technology, stationed retrograde in Gemini, sign of communication, the White House held a dinner for all kinds of tech bros. And thank you, Astro Twins, for making this connection. And the New York Times stirred up the your zodiac sign has changed controversy yet again, and many of us have addressed this. Please. All right. In other news, a federal court blocked ending temporary protected status for Haitians and Venezuelans. And, also previously, it had been ruled unconstitutional for the administration to try to have expedited removals for Venezuelans under the Alien Enemies Act because we're not at war with Venezuela. So let's play la la la, connect the dots. The U.S. attacked a Venezuelan boat in international waters, claiming they were going after a drug cartel. Still not, uh, wasn't because of war. And the indication is that the boat that they took out was civilians. So international war crime trying to provoke a war. The Supreme Court overruled two, count them, two lower courts' temporary restraining orders against ISIS tactics in Central California that have been said to be a violation of Fourth Amendment, racial profiling, and Kavanaugh said, no, that's okay. ICE raided a Hyundai plant in Georgia and arrested something like 250 South Korean workers who were legally there on work visas. Maybe coincidentally, Marvel has decided it's leaving Georgia, and it is also leaving the US and moving its operations to the United Kingdom. In the ongoing saga, the House Oversight Committee got documents from the Epstein estate, including the infamous birthday book and the actual drawing attributed to the current White House occupant, which is not of a buxom woman, but what looks like a girl's body. And also Epstein's birth certificate. So there's new information about his um, what his birth chart actually looks like, Bloomberg published some 18,000 messages from Epstein's private Yahoo account, which appear to contradict Maxwell's testimony and indicate that Epstein told people to get Trump's name out of things. And the UK ambassador to the US has been fired over his connection to Epstein. Meanwhile, in other news, Russia sent drones into Poland, and there might be another country. I think Lithuania might have been hit. At any rate, Poland got hit, and Poland has now invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which requires the different member countries to consult about what they're going to do. As the sun crossed the South Node, Charlie Kirk, head of an organization called Turning Point America, which is weirdly symbolic in this, uh, was shot and killed. An MSNBC political analyst was immediately fired for saying something along the lines of hateful thoughts lead to hateful speech, lead to hateful actions. There will be a lot coming out about this, I am certain. So we are heading into one of the most active stretches of time of the entire year astrologically. And the way I want to sum it up is volatility. If you think that the news cycle has been insane, it's going to ratchet up even more, but there will be nuggets of truth and actually useful information flying out and flying out and flying out. Use a wind tunnel and the image of lots of papers flying everywhere, and it will probably involve more information coming out about things that got set in motion, maybe in August. Definitely a continuation of the women that stood on the Capitol steps on September 3rd and tried to push for legislation. And spoke of their own experiences at the hand of Epstein and other people. There'll be a lot of information about that. There will be moves to get clear about what is actually going on, and the subterfuge may really heat up as well. There are more and more indications of leaders being toppled. That is another huge theme of the week. The 19th is a particularly active day. One thing that we've got going on all week is a recurring pattern of an absolute round robin of energy flowing through communication and shocking things and bits about power and more coming to light, being talked about. I would encourage you to find your own internal point of calm and knowing and trust your own instincts about what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what is going on. Also, it will be imperative to ground and step out of all of this, or you will go crazy with it. Again, I cannot stress enough, as intense and hectic as the news cycle has been, it will be even more so next week. So part of it is because of a couple of grand trines still happening, one involving communication. At the end of the month, it's one where we start assimilating and figuring out, okay, now I know what this all means. The planet that rules communication is changing signs and moving into this. So Mercury is moving into Libra. The planet that rules how we get along with each other and what we value is also changing signs at the same time and moving into a highly intellectual, evaluative, discerning mode. But before she does that, that is Venus, she is eclipsed or occulted by the moon. This is on the 19th. Huge day. Louise did mention last week, this is a marker for a leader or leaders plural getting eclipsed, getting pushed out. This is on somebody's ascendant. I have said repeatedly we have multiple windows for the removal of what has been occupying our government. And this is another huge, huge window, and it is chipping away at something that has been chipped away at repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. Um, there is, there are actually two, count them, two more fingers of God, fingers of fate, fingers of destiny, yods pointing at something must be done. Venus is moving to where Mercury was on September 3rd. So women values, what are we going to do about things? A sense of we've got to act, we've got to fix this, we've got to clean this up. Later in later in the month, Mars, planet of action, gets the same hit, the same influence. Um, Got to do something, something pushing on. More about Mars in a second. This is all happening as we're building to a solar eclipse, which is an incredibly intense time. So the fact that we are in between the lunar eclipse of the 7th and the solar eclipse of the 21st escalates the volatility in next week in particular. Then the sense of a new operating system gets put into place. A solar eclipse also boots something out because the sky does go dark, even if only briefly. Something leaves. We're in massive cleanup mode. How are we going to restructure? How are we going to reorganize? The past is a huge factor in what we're doing for the future because Saturn, the planet of adulting, father time, is exactly opposite the sun and the moon when they form the eclipse. So issues of leaders and responsibility and accountability and possibly victimization will be huge with all of this. The sun then moves into Libra, starts autumn in the northern hemisphere, spring in the southern hemisphere. And because all of this is in the air and resonating when the sun makes this shift, these issues continue to run for the next 3 months. And I have a much longer discussion of this at my Patreon. Right as this is happening, the way that we make things happen, Mars, the masculine drive, how we push ourselves forward, I call him the cosmic first responder, moves into the sign of Scorpio. This goes deep. This is investigative. This is, I'm going to get to the bottom of, I will work behind the scenes. As Mars does this, he sets up a challenge to whatever was going on at the beginning of November, the beginning of January, and also in April. The November and the January dates are directly tied to the United States election. There will be much, much, much more coming out with a vibe of we've got to do something about this, evidence of criminality, evidence of tinkering, evidence of secrets, backroom machinations with a point of this must be addressed. And I do sense that there's much more going on here than the launch of Kamala Harris's book, which is timed for this. So, this next couple of weeks, especially next week, is a time period that many people have been focusing on for quite a while. This is when a lot of stuff that has been building and brewing and toppling and destabilizing could all hit critical mass at once. So know that the news cycle is going to be insane. It's really important to keep yourself from drowning in it, from getting caught up in it. It's really important to find your own truth and balance and go out in nature if at all possible and do things that feed you and your soul, not get completely caught up in whatever the insanity is that passes as reality. So be safe. Louise and I think we'll be back next Friday. I have a second video coming out today that is focused on the New Jersey governor's race. but I wanted to put this information in a separate video. All right, so talk to you again soon.